Greetings, fellow cultivators. Welcome to Autonova. Remember to like and subscribe to support the journey. Now, let's dive into the next chapter of A Will Eternal. Well? Chen Shang said sneeringly. Yes? Or no? Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times. Before he even had a chance to finish digging the pit for this pink-robed young man to fall into, he had jumped in of his own accord. This guy really is insidious. This jade pendant is probably extremely valuable. And based on how confident he seems, it's obvious that if I succeed, he'll just ask me to do another spirit enhancement, and then another and another. After reaching this point in his train of thought, an imperceptible glint appeared in his eyes. Then his expression turned grimmer. Shivering, and even panting a bit, he forced his eyes to turn bloodshot. "There's no job I won't take," he shouted, seemingly incapable of revealing how he was actually very unconfident about it all. "But when I perform spirit enhancements, I charge with each successful enhancement. And if you don't have enough soul medicine, Everyone looking on would think that he actually didn't want to accept the job, and was trying to make it sound like the customer couldn't afford to pay. "That's fine," Chen Shang said. "We can calculate the bill based on every success." At this point, he frowned slightly. Something about the situation seemed off. Although he was trying to control everything, it almost seemed like Bai Xiaochun had pushed him into a corner. Eyes flashing, he reviewed his plan, and then chuckled coldly. "Seems he's on to me," he thought. However, there is no way he could possibly guess how determined I am to succeed, nor the fact that I'm actually prepared for the fact that he can perform spirit enhancements up to the 14-fold level. Besides, there's even a high likelihood that he'll fail somewhere from the 11th to the 14th spirit enhancement. Although Chen Shang's actions all seemed a bit rash, he had actually investigated Bai Hao, and come to the realization that he was equipped almost entirely with 14-fold spirit-enhanced items. What a pity that I have items that not even he could compensate me for if he destroyed them. Furthermore, even if he does succeed in raising them to the 14-fold level, if he gives up after that, my efforts will be equally effective." Chuckling, he agreed to all of Bai Xiaochun's demands. When he saw the ashen look on Bai Xiaochun's face in response to that, he felt a bit more comfortable. Although Bai Xiaochun appeared to be scowling on the verge of tears, he was actually smiling broadly in his heart. And yet, he kept his teeth gritted, and then flicked his sleeve as he took the jade pendant into the back room. Before long, he came out, and the jade pendant had no more silver designs on it. Instead, it had a single golden design. Furthermore, it looked different from before. It was a bit smaller, and it emanated spiritual power fluctuations that caused everyone in the area to stare in shock. He actually did it, an 11-fold spirit enhancement. When Chen Shang saw it, his expression remained the same as ever, but inwardly, he sighed. As for Bai Xiaochun, he proudly stuck his chin up and then announced, "Soul Aid, please explain my spirit enhancement pricing method to the young prince here, and calculate how much soul medicine he owes me." Bai Hao stepped forward. When creating something from nothing, the first spirit enhancement costs 1,000 portions of soul medicine. Going from 1-fold to 2-fold is 2,000. 2-fold to 3-fold is 4,000. And so on and so forth. 4-fold is 8,000. 7-fold is 64,000. 9-fold is 256,000. 10-fold is 512,000. As for the 11th, the total soul medicine cost would be 1,024,000. Gasps could be heard among the audience in response to Bai Hao's words. Although some had already calculated the numbers involved, to hear them spoken out loud was a shocking thing. Bai Xiaochun stood there looking proudly at Chen Shang, who simply smiled coolly as he produced a soul-hoarding pagoda. "There are 5 million portions of soul medicine in this soul-hoarding pagoda. Keep performing more enhancements. I'm not happy with only 11. Another buzz of surprised talk went through the crowd. The kind of bet that they were witnessing was so exciting that many of them were already sending messages to friends using transmission jade slips. Before long, all of Burrow 89 was buzzing, and countless soul cultivators were rushing toward Bai Xiaochun's shop. There were also numerous streams of divine sense which came to focus on the shop. Bai Xiaochun's pupils constricted as his theory was confirmed. Abandoning his act, he chuckled coldly and took the jade pendant into the back room. Shortly thereafter, he emerged, and the jade pendant had a second golden design on it. When people outside the shop saw it, cries of shock rose up into the air. 12-fold enhancement. Heavens, I haven't seen a competition like this in years. Call everybody over to watch. This is definitely going to shake all of Arch-Emperor City. The shouts and cries of the crowd were now causing Chen Shang to feel a bit of pressure, and it was even possible to see some hesitation in his eyes. However, he continued to glare at Bai Xiaochun as he said, "I'm still not happy. Keep going. Bai Xiaochun could tell how determined this pink-robed young man was. Inwardly, he gave a cold harumph and thought, you just wait. I'm gonna scare you to death. Spinning in place, he headed into the back room and came out moments later to reveal 3 golden designs on the pendant. Before anyone could react, Bai Xiaochun loudly said, Soul Aid, calculate the bill. Bai Hao couldn't help but shiver. Never before had he ever experienced anything like this, and yet, it was without the slightest hesitation that he replied, the cost is 4,096,000 portions of soul medicine. By this point, it wasn't just Burrow 89 that was being rocked by the event. Word was spreading into the other boroughs, and it was even possible to see people hurrying over from those locations to join the commotion. Chen Shang was trembling, and a bit of panic could be seen in his eyes. He almost couldn't think straight. This was definitely not what he had planned for. He had placed all his hopes on the possibility that the jade pendant would be destroyed. This guy's skill in the art of spirit enhancement is shocking, he thought. However, he still gritted his teeth, looked up at Bai Xiaochun, and then slowly said, I'm still not happy. Keep going. The audience was completely bowled over. By this point, they could tell that this was no ordinary bet, and that there was some specific reason that Chen Shang kept saying he wasn't happy. Still not happy, huh? Bai Xiaochun thought, alright Mr. Pinkster. You just wait to see how I scare the living daylights out of you. He returned to the back room, and after the time it takes an incense stick to burn, he came back out. This time, when the audience saw the jade pendant, they devolved into a massive hubbub. 14-fold, a 14-fold spirit enhancement. How is this even possible? Heavens! Even as everyone clamored, they also spread word to their friends, who began to hurry over in shock. Not bothering to wait for Bai Hao to calculate the bill, Bai Xiaochun proudly announced, 8,192,000 portions of soul medicine. He was of the opinion that personally saying it himself was a lot more impressive. Bai Xiaochun's words were like a death knell to Chen Shang. He felt like his mind and heart were being struck by countless bolts of lightning, and his face was as white as a sheet. He staggered backward as if physically struck, gasping, his eyes completely bloodshot. Although he had told himself he was prepared for the possibility of a 14-fold spirit enhancement, he was still completely shaken. Furthermore, the amount of soul medicine at stake was immense. That was especially true when he contemplated how he had already spent nearly 15 million. He was already starting to regret this little plan of his, and was even thinking of giving up, but as the saying goes, if you ride a tiger, it's hard to get off. There were simply too many people in the audience now, with more showing up by the moment. There were probably tens of thousands of people lining the street outside. Sticking his chin up proudly, Bai Xiaochun said, well, dear customer, are you happy now? At the moment, there isn't enough soul medicine in this soul-hoarding pagoda to pay me the 8,192,000 you owe me. If, after we settle accounts, you're still not happy, then I'd be happy to continue. When Bai Hao heard this, he stood there stunned and feeling a bit hesitant. From what he could tell, his master had actually calculated the bill wrong, and had only included the most recent spirit enhancement, not the combination of everything up to this point. Although he wanted to point this out, there were simply too many people in the area. Considering he was supposed to be a simplistic soul slave, there was no way he could speak up now. Sighing, he mentally did a facepalm. Gasps were also audible among the audience. Quite a few people had odd expressions on their faces as they too came to the conclusion that Bai Xiaochun had calculated the bill wrong. However, this pink-robed young man was obviously a noble chosen, and none of them wanted to offend him. Many people were looking at Bai Xiaochun furtively, wondering what would happen next. As for Chen Shang, he was obviously a bit surprised at Bai Xiaochun's proud front. However, he still couldn't figure out what exactly was going on. Although he refused to believe that his opponent would actually miscalculate the bill, he patted his bag of holding and threw out another soul-hoarding pagoda. There are 4 million souls in there. I'm still not happy. Keep going. This was all of the soul medicine that both he and the other chosen had been able to come up with. It was a huge amount, the type that could form the reserve savings of a great clan. At this point, Bai Xiaochun proudly said, the cost for going from a 14 to a 15-fold spirit enhancement is different. It doesn't cost double, it costs 10 times as much. That means that if I succeed, you will owe me 81,920,000 portions of soul medicine. Even Bai Xiaochun seemed a bit jumpy to speak such a number out loud. After a moment of silence, he added, Are you sure you can afford that much? The number Bai Xiaochun had just spoken left Chen Shang teetering on the verge of passing out. Gasps could be heard among the other soul cultivators looking on. After all, there was a huge difference between a 14-fold spirit enhancement and a 15-fold one. 15-fold spirit enhancements brought with them the power of a diva, and could help cultivators who were in the great circle of the nascent soul stage to gain enlightenment of heaven and earth. Spirit-enhanced treasures like that were incredibly valuable, and usually were possessed only by clans who specialized in spirit enhancement, or the powerful noble or aristocratic clans. Treasures like that which did exist would rarely be brought out into the open. Such items were not common at all, especially because the success rates with high-level spirit enhancements were so low. One needed only look at the fact that the giant Ghost King, upon rewarding Bai Xiaochun and simultaneously entrusting him with an extremely important mission in the Necromancer Kettle, only gave him a 16-fold spirit-enhanced spear. The reason for that was not because he was being stingy. Rather, it was because items with 15-fold spirit enhancements or higher were just too rare. Besides, most were only suitable for use by devas. Because of their rarity, it would be difficult for anyone to say with certainty how much soul medicine it would be worth to raise something from a 14-fold to a 15-fold spirit enhancement. Bai Xiaochun's quote of more than 80 million portions of soul medicine seemed dramatic, but everyone present realized that if he succeeded, the resulting item would be of great help to anyone wishing to rise to the level of a diva. In the wildlands, people became devas by means of magical items with 15 or more spirit enhancements. By gaining enlightenment of heaven and earth with such items, they could become one with all creation. Take your time and think about it, Bai Xiaochun said sincerely. Look, if you're still not happy, then considering that you offered to pay 10 times my quote, then I guess you already owe me. About 80 million. So, are we finished here? With that, he looked at Chen Shang with a look of sincere compassion. When Bai Hao was reminded of the matter of 10 times, the original quote, he sighed. From what he could tell, the miscalculation of the bill had already lost them more than 60 million portions of soul medicine. As for Chen Shang, he shouted, "Shut the hell up." His eyes were so bloodshot that they almost looked like pools of blood. Tone mocking, he continued, "I'm not happy. Do the next enhancement, alright? Do it. I refuse to believe that you can succeed at a 15-fold enhancement." The two old men flanking him had long since grown completely ashen. Terrified, they even attempted to interfere and give Chen Shang some advice. "Get out of my face," he yelled at them. "The bet is still on, Bai Hao." He really had no choice but to keep betting. If he did, then he still had a shot at winning. But if he gave up right now, the price he would have to pay would be impossible to accept. Bai Xiaochun gave Chen Shang a long, level look, then took the jade pendant into the back room without another word. Countless gazes and countless streams of divine sense were locked onto him. Everyone was jumpy with excitement, wondering what would happen in the following moments. However, no one could observe what went on in the back room. There was a scintillating restrictive spell that blocked all sight and divine sense, as well as another barrier that was almost impossible to penetrate. Of course, the barrier was actually created by the powers of Bai Xiaochun's mask, and was created in a way that only a demigod would be able to pierce through to see what was beyond. And yet, anyone who did pierce through it would only see what appeared to be Bai Xiaochun going about a spirit enhancement in the ordinary fashion. Bai Xiaochun had set it up this way intentionally to dispel any suspicions on the part of the most powerful experts. Bai Xiaochun had always planned to rely on the mask as his most powerful line of defense. By now, there were too many soul cultivators gathering outside to count, even filling the air to the point where it cast Burrow 89 into shadow. Everyone was talking, creating a din of conversation that filled the area. This Bai Hao is definitely a celestial necromancer. Furthermore, he's probably at the peak of the celestial necromancer rank. Celestial necromancers all have special methods that they use to increase their success rates. However, going from a 14 to 15-fold spirit enhancement is really difficult. Success all depends on luck. The truth is that this bet is no longer about necromantic skill. It's really just about luck. Well, whatever happens, the #1 spirit enhancement shop under heaven is definitely going to be popular after this. It might not be completely famous, but it will definitely be known throughout Arch-Emperor City. As everyone talked about the matter, Chen Shang stood there trembling, his face devoid of blood and his mind a complete blank. Things had already progressed to the point where he wasn't sure he could handle it, and might collapse. How could this be happening? My plan was perfect. How could he be succeeding every single time? I had so much soul medicine built up. It should have been enough. But then he went and refused to fail even once. Well, this time he'll definitely fail, and when he does, I'll have finally won. Time passed, and more people gathered outside of the shop. Nobody seemed even the least bit impatient. It was common knowledge that going from a 14 to a 15-fold spirit enhancement took a lot of time, and therefore, all gazes and all streams of divine sense were fixed on the door to the back room. Bai Hao floated off to the side, face expressionless, but sighing in his heart at how easily his master started feuds, and at the same time, counterstruck with deadly force. Chen Shang appeared to be in sore straits, so much so that Bai Hao even felt sorry for him. But then he thought, well, you could have kept things between the two of us, but you had to go and offend my master. 2 hours passed, and Bai Xiaochun still hadn't emerged. Of course, the truth was that he was actually inside the back room doing some breathing exercises, and not even thinking about spirit enhancement. 6 hours later, he expelled a mouthful of impure vital energy, then opened his eyes. That should be enough time, he thought, shaking his head. I really didn't want to screw you over, but I had no choice. You kept pushing me to do more spirit enhancements. You insisted. Well, when I make a move, I frighten even myself. Marveling at how pure and benevolent he was, he finally started to work on the spirit enhancement. Before long, he had a jade pendant with 5 golden designs on it. It pulsed with the energy of a diva, and the flood dragon inside of it looked incredibly realistic, to the point where it almost appeared to be a diva soul. What a lovely treasure, he thought, moved. After looking at it closely, he realized it would be a simple thing to unleash a shadowy flood dragon from within the pendant, and that it would be monumentally powerful. After fiddling around with the pendant for a bit, he finally rose to his feet and took a deep breath. Then, he forced himself to look tired and drained, and even made sure that his forehead was dripping with sweat. Finally, he trudged out of the back room looking very ashen-faced. As soon as he appeared, all eyes and all streams of divine sense focused on him, and especially on his hand. When everyone saw the jade pendant, the first reaction was silence. But then, everyone erupted into a commotion that could shake heaven and earth. Heavens! This, 15-fold. I can sense the aura of a diva on it. He did it. I can't believe he really did it. A 15-fold spirit-enhanced magical item. Countless eyes began to shine with greed. If a 15-fold spirit-enhanced item like that went up for auction, it would bring in an astronomical price. And this Grandmaster Bai enhanced it all on his own. The exclamations turned into a small-scale sound wave that caused much of Arch-Emperor City to tremble. As for Chen Shang, he could barely speak. Impossible. Impossible. It's not real, he muttered, staggering backward in despairing daze. Bai Xiaochun blinked a few times and then said, Look, didn't I just try to persuade you not to do another enhancement? But you wouldn't listen. Whatever. I'm a soft-hearted kind of guy. How about I give you a discount? Let's just make it a nice round number. 80 million portions of soul medicine. Wait, no. You said that if you were happy, you would give 10 times the original price. So that makes 800 million. Looking sincerely at the flabbergasted Chen Shang, he continued, You absolutely, positively must not ask for another enhancement. You listen to me, alright? Keep your cool. Off to the side, Bai Hao was feeling very odd. By now, he could see that his master had intentionally miscalculated the bill earlier to lay a trap. How could he not have seen it himself? All of a sudden, his master seemed even more profound and enigmatic than ever, and on top of that, completely unpredictable. Blood sprayed out of Chen Shang's mouth as his heart was gripped with regret. Bai Hao, you conned me. You miscalculated that bill on purpose. You tricked me. He had originally planned to simply back out of the bet, but after Bai Xiaochun miscalculated the bill, he decided to keep going. Considering how things had turned out though, it seemed obvious that his opponent had been playing him all along. With that, he spun on his heel and prepared to make a run for it. There was absolutely no way he could continue the bet, the stakes were just too high. And that didn't just count for him, not even his entire clan could sustain such losses. The mere thought of 800 million portions of soul medicine filled his heart with such fear that the only thing he could think to do was leave. I conned you? Bai Xiaochun shot back. What's that supposed to mean? Hey, get back here. You owe me some soul medicine. How dare you try to renege on your debt? Bai Xiaochun truly had no idea what he meant, and even started to think back to make sure he had calculated everything correctly. The truth was that he really had accidentally calculated the bill wrong. And now, the sight of his opponent preparing to flee instantly caused his expression to turn grim. After all, he had sincerely tried to persuade him to stop. And yet, not only had the pink-robed young man demanded to keep going, he had then hurled false accusations about miscalculating the bill. It was really outrageous. I absolutely hate cheaters, Bai Xiaochun roared. With that, he took a step forward. Of course, Chen Shang's 2 Dao protectors had sensed that things were heating up, and immediately moved to block the way. But when they made contact with Bai Xiaochun, blood sprayed out of their mouths, and they tumbled backward. As for Bai Xiaochun, he barreled forward at top speed to appear right in front of Chen Shang. Then he reached his hand back and prepared to slap him across the face. A thunderous smacking sound rang out, and blood sprayed out of Chen Shang's mouth as he was sent flying backward. "Do you truly dare to start a fight in Arch-Emperor City?" he shrieked. "You bet I dare," Bai Xiaochun shouted. "You owe me soul medicine, buddy. I'm completely in the right here." With that, he stepped forward and kicked Chen Shang, sending him flying into the air. A moment later, he slammed into the stone wall on the opposite side of the shop, where he remained, embedded and unmoving. Many of his bones were broken, and his cultivation base was in chaos. Then, unexpectedly, he simply passed out. HMPH. I can't believe he tried to renege on his debt. When you owe Lord Bai a debt, you pay up. As far as Bai Xiaochun was concerned, this pink-robed brat was a complete scoundrel. He was the one who had come and suggested the bet, and then he'd attempted to flee. That just went to show how arrogant the brat was, and one of the things Bai Xiaochun hated most in life was when people looked down on him. Looking over at Chen Shang lying unconscious in the wall, his two old Dao protectors immediately began to shout in rage at Bai Xiaochun. "What gall, Bai Hao? Chen Shang is the Qilin son of our Chen clan, and our most powerful patriarch is currently a heavenly duke." Heavenly duke? A flicker of dread ran through Bai Xiaochun. After all, in the wildlands, the only people who could become heavenly dukes were people at the peak of the diva realm. Devas like Duke Deathcrier were only earthly dukes. However, Bai Xiaochun was convinced that he was in the right here, and besides, this Chen Shang had been the one to come looking for trouble, not the other way around. He had also been the one to suggest the bet, and had been the one to try to flee. Bai Xiaochun wasn't in the wrong at all, and therefore, he had no reason to look scared in front of all these people. Gritting his teeth, he glared at the Dao protectors and said, "Who gives a crap about heavenly dukes? Back in Giant Ghost City, I kidnapped a demigod." With that, he casually waved his sleeve, causing a wild wind to pick up the two Dao protectors and slam them into the wall next to Chen Shang, where they too fell unconscious. When the bystanders saw all of this, gasps rang out. Everyone was thoroughly impressed by Bai Xiaochun's valiant performance, and word of the incident was already beginning to spread. With that, Bai Xiaochun clasped his hands behind his back and proudly said, "Soul aid, please close the shop." Heart-pounding with fear, Bai Hao quickly escorted all of the customers out and then closed the front door. As for all of the soul cultivators who had come to watch the excitement, they were shaken by what they had seen. In fact, very few of them left. After all, it was unlikely that the heavenly duke from the Chen clan would simply let this matter drop, and therefore, people wanted to see what would happen next. From now on, this spirit enhancement shop is definitely going to be famous in Arch-Emperor City. A 15-fold spirit enhancement. That alone is enough to make the shop worthy of its name, and the couplets. Who would have thought? There was actually a top master hiding in Burrow 89, someone named Bai Hao. Why does that name seem familiar? Of course, everyone was aware of Bai Hao's name because of how Chen Shang had yelled it out. Soon, people began contemplating that name, and before long, one of the soul cultivators suddenly let out a shout of shock. "Bai Hao, I remember now. He must be Bai Hao from Giant Ghost City. He killed his own father and helped the Giant Ghost King during the rebellion. He's also the one who kidnapped all of those chosen in the necromancer kettle. Bai Hao, heavens, I remember now too. It is him. I heard that he's vicious and merciless, and a reviler of his own clan. He's a bully through and through who everybody hates. All that is nothing. I heard that he actually takes pride in being a wife stealer. Shameless to the ultimate degree. So, he's actually in Arch-Emperor City now. And now he's taken up the mantle of a Grandmaster of Spirit Enhancement." As more people talked, more people recalled the stories they had heard about Bai Hao. Meanwhile, back inside the shop, Bai Xiaochun stood there with his hands clasped behind his back, looking at Chen Shang and his two Dao protectors embedded in the wall. As he thought about how arrogant Chen Shang had acted, and how he had even tried to escape without settling his debt, his anger grew. Complete and utter bullies. I was keeping my head low, trying not to provoke anybody. Suffering in silence. But then this bastard had to come and try to bully me. Using the powers of the mask to ensure that only Bai Hao could hear him, he said, "Howard, this isn't Master's fault, is it? You saw everything. They were completely out of line." Bai Hao simply smiled wryly and shook his head, unsure of exactly what to say in response. Disaster had already been instigated, and yet, it was true that Bai Xiaochun hadn't started it. It really was a case in which the tree might long for peace, but the wind will never cease. "Master, we need to think of what to do now," he said. Their clan is definitely going to come looking for them soon. Bai Xiaochun actually felt a bit nervous. Although he had acted brazenly earlier, he had actually been very nervous. After all, this was a clan with a diva in it, and he wasn't in Giant Ghost City. Therefore, he nervously took out a transmission jade slip and sent a voice message to the Giant Ghost King. Before long, the Giant Ghost King's domineering voice could be heard responding. What are you scared of? He's just a heavenly duke, right? Listen, Bai Hao, you're the majordomo of Giant Ghost City, and also my son-in-law. They came looking to stir up trouble, and you beat them up, right? If that's all, then so be it. If Chen Haosong tries to use his status to be a bully, then I'll do the same thing right back. It had been a long time since Bai Xiaochun felt moved by the care of another, so as soon as he heard the Giant Ghost King's response, it was like music to his ears. The fact that His Highness the King actually cared was enough to take a lot of the pressure off. Taking a deep breath, he looked over at Chen Shang and his Dao protectors, and gave them all a good glare. HMPH, trying to run out on a debt to me? Maybe I should charge some interest. After all, the Giant Ghost King said he would back me up. Licking his lips, he tried to decide if he was pushing things a bit too far. But then he remembered that he was owed 800 million portions of soul medicine, and his anger flared. Therefore, he didn't hesitate to pull out his eternal parasol and then stick it into Chen Shang. I'll just take a little, he murmured. Immediately, Chen Shang's eyes snapped open, and blue veins bulged out on his face and neck. He even let loose an agonized shriek. When the people on the outside heard that, their jaws dropped. Even Bai Xiaochun was a bit startled, and pulled the eternal parasol back. He had only sucked away 10% of Chen Shang's life force to improve his standing in the tempered bones level. What are you doing, Bai Hao? You're not gonna die a good death. Chen Shang was obviously a bit thinner. Glaring angrily at Bai Xiaochun, he began to try to struggle free from the wall. Considering how clear-eyed and worked up Chen Shang was, it seemed that he hadn't really been hurt by the eternal parasol, and therefore, Bai Xiaochun decided that he might as well take a bit more life force. With that, he stabbed the parasol into Chen Shang again. Shut up, I just took a little, it's not like it's a big deal. You owe me 800 million portions of soul medicine. How dare you curse me? Another agonized shriek rang out, followed by more cursing. After that, Bai Xiaochun used the parasol a third time, then a fourth and a fifth. Bai Hao was stunned, and quickly began to offer some advice. Master, you should stop. You're going to kill him. Don't worry, your master has a lot of experience with this kind of thing. Bai Xiaochun was actually feeling quite enthused, and before he realized it, Chen Shang was little more than a bag of skin and bones. His cries were now weak, and he was even gasping for breath. Furthermore, his eyes shone with an unprecedented level of terror. By this point, he thoroughly regretted all of his decisions, and also understood why all of his friends had cursed this Bai Hao so much, and yet hadn't dared to tangle with him. Having finished with Chen Shang, Bai Xiaochun looked over at the two Dao protectors. After a moment, he said, "What do you say, my apprentice? Should I move on to these two?" Bai Hao smiled wryly and looked over at the poor Chen Shang, who had been turned into a virtual skeleton by his master. Although he felt bad for him, Bai Hao also felt he needed to tell his master how he truly felt. Why not give them all the same treatment? We've already offended Heavenly Duke Chen, so it probably won't make a difference either way. That's the spirit, Bai Xiaochun replied. Ha ha ha, I was thinking the exact same thing. With that, he stabbed the eternal parasol into the first of the Dao protectors. Before long, both of the Dao protectors were both much skinnier than before. However, knowing that he didn't want to go too far, and also considering that they hadn't been the main culprits, he only took a portion of their life force. Even as he was delighting in the influx of life force, the front door of the shop rumbled as though a powerful force had landed onto it. Then, the door slammed open, and a wave of diva energy surged into the shop. Bai Hao, teeth gritted and eyes blazing with rage, Mistress Red Dust burst inside. Startled, Bai Xiaochun pulled back the eternal parasol and spun to face the beautiful Mistress Red Dust as she stomped into the shop. Unfortunately, Bai Xiaochun was in no mood or position to enjoy feasting upon her beauty. There were few things in the wildlands that he feared more than Mistress Red Dust. After everything the two of them had gone through, Bai Xiaochun was convinced that if she found out who he really was, she would stop at nothing to kill him. Heart-pounding, he tried to look as calm as possible as he affectionately said, "What are you doing here, Samo? What have you done, Bai Hao?" she said in a voice of rage, nauseated by the fact that he had called her Samo. Moments ago, she had received a message from the Giant Ghost King, and then right afterward, from Heavenly Duke Chen. That made sense considering that many people in the city already knew that Bai Hao was the majordomo of Giant Ghost City, and also her intended husband. If Bai Xiaochun caused trouble, then the Chen clan's Heavenly Duke would naturally come to Mistress Red Dust. After all, once Heavenly Duke Chen learned of what had happened, and heard that 800 million portions of soul medicine were at stake, he knew that not even he could afford to pay up. Despite being completely enraged, and also having absolutely no desire to see Bai Xiaochun, Mistress Red Dust had no choice but to come handle the matter. Looking over at the emaciated Chen Shang and his two Dao protectors, Mistress Red Dust's fury built, and her loathing of Bai Xiaochun grew. You really know how to cause problems, don't you? I don't know what my father sees in you. Listen up, if you cause any more problems in the future, you'll end up like this statue. With that, she pulled a statue out of her bag of holding and crushed it to pieces. Originally, Bai Xiaochun had been preparing to argue a bit, but when he realized that the statue she had pulled out bore his own true visage, his temper suddenly vanished. Heavens, this Granny Red Dust really does hate me, doesn't she? She actually carries statues of me around to crush when she gets angry. A shiver passed through him. After all, what scared him was not Mistress Red Dust's threat, but rather, her attitude. However, even as his fear increased, he realized that the situation really was very exhilarating. After all, Mistress Red Dust's own father was playing the matchmaker between the two of them, and Mistress Red Dust had no idea that he was really Bai Xiaochun. The entire thing was very exciting. If I ever have the chance to take her into the bridal chamber, and take off my mask, I wonder if it would startle her to death. Suddenly, Bai Xiaochun realized that he was thinking about things in entirely the wrong way, and quickly readjusted his attitude. However, it was still very exhilarating. When Mistress Red Dust saw the way that he was looking at her, she simply couldn't suppress her revolt. Were it not for the Giant Ghost King's support of Bai Hao, then she would definitely not suppress her desire to exterminate him on the spot. This Bai Hao is an obscene lowlife, she thought. You can tell from the look in his eye that he's contemplating something abominable. However, she had no choice but to suppress her woe. Waving her right hand, she collected up Chen Shang and the two Dao protectors. Her beautiful face was almost green with fury as she growled, I'm warning you, Bai Hao. I don't have any patience left to deal with you. If you annoy me even the slightest bit, don't blame me for exterminating you. Having cleared his mind of the inappropriate thoughts from before, Bai Xiaochun said in a frustrated voice, Hey, this wasn't my fault. He came looking to cause trouble, and he was the one who suggested we make a bet. He was the one who lost 800 million portions of soul medicine to me. Shut up, Mistress Red Dust shot back, glaring at him. Then she turned to leave, apparently not inclined to help Bai Xiaochun collect the soul medicine he was owed because of the debt. Everyone on the outside had clearly seen Mistress Red Dust stomp her way into the shop. Furthermore, word had already spread that Bai Xiaochun was the majordomo of Giant Ghost City, and also that the Giant Ghost King had promised Sergeant Major Mistress Red Dust of the Giant Ghost Legion to him in marriage. That only served to intrigue people further. When they thought about it all, and about how domineering Mistress Red Dust was, it caused many mouths to twist into slight sneers. Well, I guess it's not Bai Hao's fault. After all, his Taoist partner is a diva. Goddess Red Dust has always been completely domineering. To tell you the truth, I actually feel sorry for this Bai Hao. When such talk drifted into Bai Xiaochun's ears, he couldn't help but feel a bit embarrassed. The truth was that he didn't care too much about the soul medicine. Material things like that weren't very important. However, he did feel that it was a big pity that Chen Shang still had the 15-fold spirit-enhanced jade pendant in his bag of holding. And yet, considering how domineering Mistress Red Dust was acting, he hesitated to say anything. But then he thought back to something the Giant Ghost King had once said to him. What, you can't even handle a single woman? Those words rang in his mind, and actually made him feel like he was losing a lot of face. If nobody else were present, it might not have been a big deal. But Bai Hao was standing off to the side, and there were plenty of people on the street who could see what was happening, and were even discussing the situation in hushed tones. At this point, Bai Xiaochun decided that the situation had gone too far. After all, he was the very love saint who had invented the wind charm. How could he possibly lose so much face in front of so many people? Stop right there, he shouted at Mistress Red Dust, who was currently walking away from him, seething with a murderous aura. Mistress Red Dust stopped in place and looked over her shoulder, her phoenix-like eyes flashing with cold light. How dare you speak to me in such a tone? She even unleashed some diva pressure to go along with her words. She had never liked this Bai Hao, and would love to take this opportunity to teach him a lesson if he said even the slightest wrong word. Bai Xiaochun's innards churned underneath Mistress Red Dust's cold glare, and he realized that he had gone and done something impulsive. However, when he heard the crowd gasping in response to his words, he braced himself, slowly clasped his hands behind his back, and turned his head to the side. After all, his profile was his most impressive feature as far as he was concerned. Looking out of the corner of his eye at Mistress Red Dust, he put on the most arrogant expression he could manage. As of this moment, there was now something unique and special about him, something different than before, as though veins of steel pumped beneath his skin. Although His Highness the King betrothed his most beloved daughter to me, I most certainly do not deserve such an honor. Because of my status and standing, you refused to accept the matter, and there is nothing in that decision with which I can find fault. Furthermore, the reason I came to Arch-Emperor City was not just because of the matter of the marriage, but rather, for another important purpose. Your father the king wanted me to assist you in your duties. Sadly, you hate me. And I'm not interested in intentionally annoying people. But His Highness the King has shown me unending kindness, and therefore, I must still do my best to fulfill the task he assigned me. I won that soul medicine in a bet, all for the purpose of giving it to you. 800 million portions of soul medicine is a massive amount of wealth, but if you don't want it, then at least make sure that Heavenly Duke Chen owes you a huge favor. Either way, I can say that I followed His Highness the King's commands to assist you. Take the soul medicine, or not, the choice is yours. However, the choice of whether or not to speak, and what to say if I do speak, is mine. I don't need instructions from you. Furthermore, I would very much appreciate if you don't ever again use the words "shut up" with me. Now, please see yourself out. To make his performance more impressive, he called upon a bit of the underlying power of the undying Emperor's fist, which made him seem vastly more impressive than before. Everyone watching on the street was shocked, and even Mistress Red Dust seemed stunned. Never could she have imagined that Bai Xiaochun would utter words like this. Regardless of how much of what he had said was true, the fact that he was giving her 800 million portions of soul medicine was monumental. Either she took the money and ended up with massive wealth, or she rejected it and earned a huge favor from someone very powerful. Even to her, a favor from a heavenly duke was something to take very seriously. Mixed emotions could be seen in her eyes as she looked at Bai Xiaochun one last time. Then, without saying another word, she turned and left. As she did, Bai Xiaochun's voice rang out. Soul Aid, please close the shop. Bai Hao shivered. He had been stunned over and over again by the events of the day. The sudden appearance of Mistress Red Dust had been a total shock, and not even he had been able to pierce through the act put on by his master. He quickly hurried over and closed the front door of the shop. As he did, Bai Xiaochun clasped his hands behind his back and went into the back room. As soon as he did, he slumped down onto the ground, and sweat began to pour down his forehead. Taking a deep breath, he thought back to everything he had said, and felt very pleased with the show he had put on. HMMMPHH. You listen to me, Granny Red Dust. There's no way that the mighty love Saint Bai Xiaochun can't get you to submit. A whole slew of dramatic events had just occurred. After Mistress Red Dust left, the crowd finally began to thin out, and people went on their way, various thoughts running through their heads. None of them would be able to forget what had occurred. Whether it was the success with the spirit enhancements, the terrifying bet that ended up reaching a sum of 800 million portions of soul medicine, the arrival of Mistress Red Dust, or the sight of Bai Xiaochun making his solemn and yet domineering monologue, they were scenes that would be branded into the memories of everyone present. Everybody knew that from this day on, the name of Bai Hao would become very important throughout all of Arch-Emperor City. Before long, everyone was talking about the news of what had happened to the Qilin son of the heavenly Duke Chen's clan, Chen Shang. Of course, word soon came back to all of the various chosen, and they gasped in shock. This Bai Hao is too vicious. 800 million portions of soul medicine. That's ridiculous. I heard that it wasn't just the soul medicine. He also drained Chen Shang's life force. He ended up nothing more than skin and bones. Little Wolf God, Li Tiansheng, Miao Liner and many of the other chosen were all taken completely aback. Although none of them had been completely convinced that Chen Shang would be able to get rid of Bai Hao, they had at least harbored some hope. After all, they were in Arch-Emperor City, not the necromancer kettle. As they heard the news about how things had played out, they trembled with fear. The mere thought of Chen Shang's fate made them all think back to the necromancer kettle, and the brutality they had experienced. The entire group still shivered with fear because of those lingering memories. That vicious face, those coldly brutal eyes, and the nightmarish draining of their life force, were things that little wolf god and the other chosen could never forget. In fact, many of them even cut ties with Chen Shang. It was a bitter decision that they weren't happy with, but they knew they had to abandon any ideas of trying to cause problems for Bai Hao. Damn it, losing to him in the necromancer kettle was one thing, but how could the same thing happen in Arch-Emperor City? It's all the fault of that Chen Shang. No skill whatsoever. But what do we do next? This Bai Hao is incomparably vicious. We definitely need to come up with a good plan, and must avoid any rash decisions. Of course, now that everyone was talking about Bai Hao, it didn't take long before stories about what had occurred in the necromancer kettle began to spread again, until everybody was talking about the matter. Soon enough, tales about the Bai clan and giant ghost city also began to spread. Before long, everybody in the city had heard about such matters. As for Mistress Red Dust, in the end, she decided not to demand the 800 million portions of soul medicine, and instead, asked for Heavenly Duke Chen to owe her a favor. Bai Xiaochun was definitely no ordinary soul cultivator. He had a very impressive background, and because of that, the noble and aristocratic chosen were not easily able to do anything against him. They could only plot against him within the bounds of the law. Just as they had mentioned earlier in their discussion, they had to take their time to come up with a good plan. After the incident, the #1 spirit enhancement shop under heaven became very famous. In the following days, soul cultivators came from all over Arch-Emperor City and lined up to get spirit enhancements and soul medicine. Others came to merely get a glimpse of Bai Hao, and see whether he was really as superhuman as everyone claimed him to be. Burrow 89 was more of a bustling place than ever. Business for the other shops in the area began to pick up because of Bai Xiaochun's shop. It was a welcome development as far as Bai Xiaochun was concerned, but Bai Hao felt nervous about it. Worried, he said, "Master, showing off too much isn't really going to help us with our master plan." Clearing his throat, Bai Xiaochun put an anxious expression onto his face, sighed, and said, Master didn't want things to turn out this way either. You just need to get used to it. The thing is, no matter where your master goes, he always ends up rising to prominence and becoming a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering figure. I really am just too outstanding. There's nothing I can do about it." A strange expression appeared on Bai Hao's face as he looked at his master, unsure of how to respond. Finally, he simply smiled wryly and shook his head. Aware that discussing the matter was useless, he began trying to come up with his own plan about how to resolve any dangerous situations. After a bit of time passed, he came up with an idea and started to make plans. Before long, people were talking about this Bai Hao's impressive background. Certain people were very emphatic about how important Bai Hao was to the giant ghost king, and how good their relationship was. Other people would emphasize his cultivation base and battle prowess. In this way, people began to get a more rounded view of him. Bai Xiaochun was very pleased to be such a center of attention. He would often leave the shop and stroll about with his hands clasped behind his back, enjoying all the people looking at him. However, after a few days of such showing off, he got bored and went back to continue working on 17-colored flame. After the incident with Chen Shang, nobody came looking to start trouble. Everyone knew that Bai Hao was the type of person who was not to be trifled with. When he lost his temper, not even a Heavenly Duke clan could do anything about it, let alone more ordinary people. Rumors spread like wildfire. However, for Bai Xiaochun, life just got calmer and calmer. He immersed himself in researching 17-colored flame, and even began to perform some experiments, although he would immediately abort them if unexpected problems cropped up. After all, if he caused fire to rain from the heavens in this area, or sent black smoke out everywhere, his comfortable life would definitely become anything but comfortable. Because of that oath, nothing particularly dramatic occurred. However, because of how much time he was devoting to 17-colored flame, his understanding and control of 16-colored flame improved. It also helped a lot that Bai Hao would give good ideas here and there, and would help with his own augury. Together, they made slight adjustments to the formula for 16-colored flame. As time went on, Bai Xiaochun continued to struggle with 17-colored flame, and at the same time, improved his success rate with 16-colored flame. By this time, he had roughly a 30% success rate. Actually, anybody who heard that he had achieved a success rate that high would be completely incredulous. Virtually no formulas in the world were so successful, and it was all thanks to the help provided by Bai Hao. Master, this specific augury technique was designed for 15-colored flame. If I want to succeed with 17-colored flame, then we really need to improve the 16-colored flame first. Bai Hao had been working very hard lately. Even when he had time off, he would sit around thinking about 17-colored flame, and even the future formula for 18-colored flame. He had a few ideas, one being to use multiple 17-colored flames to deduce the formula for 18-colored flame. The other was to spread a 17-colored flame out into a sea of fire, add another color to it, and pull the fire back into a tongue of flame afterward. All of the thinking and discussions about the matter left Bai Hao feeling very drained mentally. It would have been very difficult for Bai Xiaochun to accomplish these things on his own. Even if he had succeeded, it would have taken an unimaginable amount of time. As Bai Xiaochun and Bai Hao were focusing on their research on flame conjuring, the rumors in the city continued to rage, and Little Wolf God and the other chosen continued taking their time coming up with a plan. However, as all of that happened, there were two people whose sinister gazes came to be locked on Bai Xiaochun's shop in Burrow 89. Little Wolf God and the others are complete morons. How could they bungle things up dealing with one trifling Bai Hao? In Burrow 3, there was a particularly towering pagoda in which the heir of the Nine Serenities king, Prince Zhou Hong, stood, staring off into the distance. He normally spent his time in Nine Serenities City, but after hearing that Bai Hao had come to Arch-Emperor City, he had hurried over. After all, he simply couldn't let the matter of the necromancer kettle rest. Almost immediately upon arrival, he heard about the wretched fate of Chen Shang. Standing next to Zhou Hong was a handsome, middle-aged man dressed in luxurious clothing. His facial features looked much like Xu Shan's. Upon hearing Zhou Hong's words, he chuckled and replied, "You're exactly right, Brother Zhou. This Bai Hao is relying completely on the giant ghost king. Maybe he does have some pretty good battle prowess, but he's only one person, and he's not the actual heir of the giant ghost king. Zhou Zimo hates him too. I think dealing with him shouldn't be much of a problem at all." Turning to look at the middle-aged man, Zhou Hong said, "Brother Xu, I heard that Xu Shan actually likes this Bai Hao. Is that true? My little sister is a bit naive. She said a lot of nice things about this Bai Hao after she got back, which cooled father down quite a bit. Anyway, she just doesn't get life. As her older brother, I simply cannot allow this insult to Spirit Advent City to stand. That is why I was more than happy to accept your invitation to come here, Brother Zhou." This middle-aged man was one of the sons of the Spirit Advent King, Xu Peng. "Brother Zhou," he continued, "do you happen to have already come up with a plan on how to deal with him?" The truth was that Xu Peng didn't really feel any enmity toward this Bai Hao. However, in the Wildlands, the position of king wasn't exclusively passed on to sons. It could also go to daughters. And the Spirit Advent King had many, many sons. It was also common knowledge in the Wildlands that all the princes and princesses in Spirit Advent City feared Xu Shan the most. After coming to find that Xu Shan had a good impression of Bai Hao, and then having received the invitation from Zhou Hong, Xu Peng decided that it was the perfect opportunity to better his own position. Of course, since he had never met this Bai Hao before, he was also prepared to back out of the situation if Zhou Hong's plan was too dangerous. Thus, this episode comes to an end. Remember to like and comment so we can discuss the story together. Until we meet again in the next chapters.